Good evening. Several Hong Kong journalists have been beaten up by 10 men in Beijing, an incident condemned by their employers. The SAR government expressed concern over the attack, saying they weren't doing anything illegal. The journalists were accompanying a Hong Kong activist trying to visit the wife of a detained dissident. ATV's Emily Sue reports.
This footage from Beijing shows the moment one of 4 Hong Kong reporters and cameramen was attacked by a group of men. The assault took place outside the home of a dissident's wife. One cameraman said he was pressed to the ground by 5 men, resulting in multiple injuries to his body. The journalists were from RTHK, Commercial Radio, Now TV and TVB. They were accompanying Hong Kong Diaoyu activist Yang Hong and 3 mainlanders to the home of Liu Xia, wife of jailed dissident Liu Xiaobo. Liu has been charged with no offense, but has been under house arrest since her husband won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2010. It was their second attempt to meet her in 2 days. Yesterday, Yang and his group arrived at Liu's apartment in Beijing and used a loud hailer to get her to come out. Liu heard their cries and turned on the lights. But police quickly surrounded Yang and his companions. They were arrested but released early this morning. Today being International Women's Day, the group returned to the apartment in another attempt to visit Liu. But security personnel stopped them from approaching her house. The last time visitors managed to meet Liu in person was back in December last year, on her husband's birthday. At that time, dissident Hu Jia, along with his friends, broke through a security cordon and barged into Liu's apartment building. The visit only lasted 4 minutes after an emotionally shaken Liu convinced them to leave. Liu Xiaobo has been detained since 2008 and was sentenced to 11 years in prison for inciting subversion of state power. His arrest set off an international outcry, with activists condemning China for violating human rights. Emily Sue, ATV News.
Former Security Secretary Ambrose Lee has slammed the attack on Hong Kong journalists on the sidelines of parliamentary meetings in Beijing. He said this evening that he will take up the issue with the central government tomorrow.
Reporters exercising their duty should be respected, and any act of violence could not be accepted and should be condemned. Now, I have contacted the Hong Kong SAR office in Beijing and hope that they will take follow-up actions. As for myself, as a deputy of the NPC, I will speak out in tomorrow's meeting.
Beijing's Liaison Office Director Zhang Xiaoming today urged Hong Kong delegates to the NPC to work with, not against, the mainland. He told them that it's crucial to the city's development for cooperation and that cross-border problems can be fixed. Beijing's Liaison Office Director Zhang Xiaoming met Hong Kong NPC delegates in the capital today. He told them that it's crucial for the city and the mainland to develop and move forward together, not as separate entities. Zhang told the delegates that for Hong Kong to maintain its status as an international hub, the city should step up cooperation with the mainland and look for long-term opportunities to develop. He warned that it's unwise for Hong Kong to only look out for benefits for itself, and that it should instead aim for the development of the rest of China as well. The improvement of the mainland, Zhang said, will also benefit the city. Legislator Ma Fung Kwok said that Hong Kong is no longer a borrowed land on borrowed time, and so when problems arise, the city should have longer-term considerations. He added that Hong Kong needs to think globally and take note of how the world around the city is changing, as well as think about whether its plans are in line with the mainland's strategic development. Zhang also thinks that Hong Kong needs to develop new industries beyond its traditional pillar ones to truly move forward. On cross-border problems such as controls on milk powder and residency rights for babies born to mainland parents in the city, Zhang said that those can be resolved. He added that Hong Kong shouldn't exaggerate these small issues and should try to work with the mainland to overcome them. Separately, the Liberal Party's James Tian today responded to reports that Executive Councillor Fanny Law said that consultations on Hong Kong's political reform can begin next year. Tian believes that's too late. He said that former Chief Executive Donald Tsang had begun consultations in 2009, and restarting them next year would mean that the city isn't moving forward at all. Locally, former Chief Secretary Raphael Hui and billionaires Thomas and Raymond Kwok, the chairman of Sun Hung Gay Properties, have pleaded not guilty to corruption. An Eastern Court magistrate decided that the case be moved to the High Court, setting the stage for Hong Kong's biggest corruption trial in decades. ATV's Anne-Marie Sim reports.
First to arrive at the courthouse this afternoon was Hong Kong's former No. 2 official Raphael Hui. He was followed by Raymond and Thomas Kwok, the co-chairman of one of Hong Kong's biggest developers, Sun Hung Kai Properties. In a pre-trial hearing at Eastern Court, Hui, the Kwok brothers and two others, Sun Hung Kai Executive Director Thomas Chan and a former senior executive of the stock exchange, Francis Kwan, listened to 8 charges against them before pleading not guilty. Their not guilty plea was entered after the prosecution dropped one of the 3 charges against the younger Kwok brother Raymond, which alleged he conspired to offer an advantage to Hui. The court then decided to move the trial to the High Court. "You are now committed to the Court of First Instance for trial," Magistrate Lee Kwok Wai said before he adjourned the hearing. A date is yet to be fixed, but the trial is expected to begin next year. Prosecutors said there will be testimony from 72 witnesses, and they have maintained their 2 charges against Thomas Kwok and 8 against Hui. All 5 defendants' bail was extended today, but they were ordered not to contact any of the witnesses, and they must give the ICAC 24 hours notice if they plan to change their address. The corruption case involves a series of payments and unsecured loans totaling millions of dollars between 2000 and 2009, allegedly paid to Hui through a number of financial entities by the other 4 men. Hui was chief secretary between 2005 and 2007. A bribery charge against Raymond Kwok was dropped today, but he still faces 2 other criminal charges, including conspiracy to commit misconduct in public office for a $4.1 million payment to Hui and furnishing false information to try to cover up the payment. Thomas Kwok faces a charge of conspiracy to commit misconduct in public office for a $5 million payment to Hui and involvement in a second $8.5 million payment to the former top government official. Hui faces 1 extra charge of misconduct in public office for allegedly failing to declare or concealing a series of payments totaling $11.1 million from the 2 other defendants, Chan and Kwan. The ICAC arrested and charged the Kwoks last year, along with their fellow defendants, in the most high-profile investigation since it was set up in 1974. Prosecutors allege that the prominent developers gave bribes in exchange for information from Hui on pending land sales.
The Urban Renewal Authority is to redevelop a number of old buildings in Sham Shui Po at a cost of $1.3 billion. More than 100 households and retailers affected by the project will be compensated. ATV's Bola reports.
The Urban Renewal Authority announced today that it's converting a number of buildings in Sham Shui Po into residential flats and commercial units. The rundown buildings on Tong King and Fuk Wing Streets are more than 50 years old. An estimated 110 families live in the buildings, which were inspected by URA staff today to determine the exact number of people who will have to move out. The project will affect 83 property owners and 27 retail units. The URA said the buildings are very old and in poor condition and included a number of illegal structures and subdivided flats. Flat owners and tenants will be compensated for moving out.
For domestic owner-occupier in this redevelopment project, they will be offered an amount which is equivalent to the value of a 7-year-old flat in the similar district of similar size. In addition to that, they will be given a allowance for their paying relevant costs. As an additional option, owner-occupier of domestic unit will be offered a flat-for-flat option so that they could choose to buy a flat by using the compensation amount based on the 7-year-old flat.
For flats or commercial units which are rented out, tenants and shop owners will be offered compensation based on market value. This resident welcomed the redevelopment, saying there are always problems with plumbing and repairs and maintenance are too expensive. If the project is approved following a 2-month consultation, 145 small to medium-sized units will be built on the site by 2021. Up to 16,000 square feet will be provided for commercial space. The redevelopment will cost $1.3 billion. Berlin, ATV News.
In other local news, high-profile businesswoman Lily Chang, who was jailed for fraud, has been released on parole. And Democratic Party legislator Albert Ho says he may resign to force a by-election to press demands for democracy. Emily Sue reports.
Democratic Party lawmaker Albert Ho says he's prepared to go to jail in the fight for democracy. Speaking during a radio show today, Ho said he has not ruled out resigning to force the government to hold a by-election for his so-called super seat. He would then run in the contest, which pan-Democrats will portray as a referendum on democracy. Ho said he was ready to accept the legal and political consequences of what he called his civil disobedience. But he needs to consult his party first. 3 years ago, 5 pan-Democratic lawmakers resigned and stood in by-elections in which they retained their seats. The by-elections triggered a controversy, with some branding them as a waste of taxpayers' money. The government plugged the loophole in January last year. Lawmakers who resigned midterm are now barred from standing in by-elections for 6 months. Businesswoman Lily Chiang ran the media gauntlet and refused to answer questions when she was picked up by her husband, Gino Yu, from the Lawwood Correctional Institution this morning. The 51-year-old former chairwoman of Pacific Challenge Holdings and the first woman to chair the General Chamber of Commerce was released on parole after spending 21 months behind bars. Chiang was jailed in June 2011 for 3.5 years after being convicted of fraud in a $3 million share option scam. Earlier this week, she launched an appeal against the conviction. Hong Kong's air pollution hit dangerous levels again today. The air pollution index was around 200 in Causeway Bay and Central. An Environmental Protection Department spokesman blamed stagnant weather for the high readings, saying pollutants, especially from cars, could not disperse in time. Pollution levels are expected to remain high this weekend. Emily Sue, ATV News.
Turning overseas, China has called for calm and restraint after Pyongyang scrapped all non-aggression pacts with Seoul, raising tensions on the Korean peninsula. The move came after China joined other members of the UN Security Council to impose more sanctions on the North for carrying out a nuclear test. Anne-Marie Sim reports.
North Korea has raised the stakes as it defies the UN, which wants it to end its nuclear program. State TV today showed pictures of its young leader, Kim Jong-un, visiting frontline troops. And the state news agency said today that Pyongyang is tearing up all its non-aggression accords that have been in force since the 1953 armistice that ended hostilities in the Korean War. The North also shut down the emergency hotline with Seoul. The developments are seen as alarming in Seoul. Foreign Ministry spokesman Kim Min-suk warned that the Kim Jong-un regime will vanish from the earth if it attacks the south. The heightened tensions come after the UN Security Council imposed new, tougher sanctions to punish Pyongyang for an underground nuclear test last month, just 2 months after a controversial rocket launch. What probably angered Pyongyang was that the UN resolution had the full support of China, which has finally run out of patience with its longtime ally.
We want to see full implementation of the resolution. The top